So as Grace was saying, the intention of this is that it should be interactive, it would be very helpful if you've got any questions, if you put those questions in the private chat to Grace. That there are slightly too many people for me to be able to see if you're trying to speak, but you are very welcome to interrupt me if you wish. You can put your hand up, you can type a message, and at the end of each of the sessions I will allow some time for those questions. So we'll have a question and answer session. I say at the end of each of the sessions, the intention is to run 3 distinct sessions, the first of which will be looking at basic audio video setup. I would have hoped that that's something, given that most of us have been on Zoom for nearly a year, we would get sorted. But actually I still see an awful lot of people who could improve their presence just simply through some of the basic elements. The second session is going to be looking at tips around use of PowerPoint over Zoom. Again, there's lots of things that we can learn, lots of little tips that I can give around that. And the third session will be looking at interacting with the audience. As I said, each of those sessions will be separate. There'll be a brief break between session 1 and session 2, just for me to collect together the necessary bits and pieces, and we'll have a 5-minute break between the second session and the third session, just a comfort break. Right, terrific. That's the outline. That there should be, as I said, opportunities right at the end for questions at the end of each of the sessions, and so I'm going to get on with this. First thing, audio video presentation. That for you to come across effectively, whether it's a regular meeting, a competition, or a business presentation, you need to be seen and you need to be heard. Now, this might seem kind of obvious, but actually it isn't something that people are necessarily getting the message. Even now, I see people taking part in Zoom calls where it's difficult to see them and it's difficult to hear them. And if they're speaking in not their native mother tongue, any of those issues can make it harder for people to get the message. So if you're trying to get your message through to your audience, you need to be able to communicate with them. And the fundamentals of that is being heard and being seen. Being heard ought really to be a fairly straightforward thing, but it isn't. There are plenty of opportunities to test how that works, but I'm going to give you a few tips around how to at least give yourself a good chance of being clearly heard. First off, I mean, it might seem a bit obvious, but the first thing to say is to get close to your microphone. That if you are distant from your microphone, particularly if you are in a room that has hard surfaces and is reverberant, you will sound very echoey, very distant, and your audience will hear the words running one into another. That makes it very difficult to distinguish each individual word. So get close to your microphone. My microphone that I'm using at the moment isn't actually this one. It's this one here. You should hear me tapping it. So I'm using the microphone that's actually on my webcam on here, because it tends to produce a better sound than the one that's on here. But I put this here just to make me look like techie and like I know what I'm doing. So it's a bit of a fake. The sound from this microphone isn't actually very good. You can't really get an improvement of sound if you are in a large and reverberant room. When an awful lot of radio presenters started doing their radio presentations from home, the BBC, I listen to the BBC a lot, were giving them guidance as to how to sound good on the radio. And they were told, sit on your sofa, get your microphone, your whatever device it is, and then put a blanket or a duvet over you. So they would be completely surrounded by sound deadening fabric. So they would do presentations in effect under the blanket in bed on a sofa. And that would make them sound very, very good because they've not got any reverberant sound around you. And so that's the tip to take. I don't suggest that you join a Zoom meeting with a blanket over your head. The video aspect of that might not work so well, but if you can make the room less reverberant, soft furnishings, carpet, curtains, cloth around you, that would significantly improve your audio quality. And if you've only got a microphone on your computer, it is well worth, particularly if you're going to stand up and move away from it, to try to use a different kind of a microphone. So there's a number of microphones that you could use. You could use a headset like this. So the microphone is here, it's clearly very close to my mouth. That if you are standing up and moving away from the camera, then you can do that by using a headset, which means you're still close into the microphone. Yes, Sumitra, you're raising your hand. Do you have a question? Oh, you've lowered your hand. Okay, so moving on. Another alternative is to use some headsets like headset like this. Now, this is actually my bone conduction headset that I use when I'm out jogging so that I don't get run over. But it is very subtle. It's really not apparent that I've got headsets on, and it's got a microphone in it and works really quite effectively. And it allows me to hear sound around me. I wouldn't advise putting fully enclosed headphones on that cover up your ears completely, because it's useful to be able to hear the sound around you. If you have fully enclosed headphones, there's a tendency to speak rather too loudly so that you could be heard yourself, and that then also doesn't help with your presentation. You're basically shouting. What other sorts of things might you want to use? Well, you could, for example, use a microphone like this. I need to move slightly out of the way. So this is about $100 or something, and this is a wireless lavalier or tie clip microphone. And so this is a set. The large box, you would take that, this bit here, you take this and clip this onto you. You would put this microphone, you clip it on about here, and then this bit would plug into your computer, and it would allow you to stand up, to talk, and yet have your microphone close to you. If you wish to sit down and talk, you could use something that is a higher quality microphone. You could, for example, use something like this. So this is a podcasting microphone. So this is something that I use when I'm actually doing recording voiceovers. I do online training and I record voiceovers. So this is a USB high quality condenser microphone. I tend not to use it on Zoom calls because you have to be close into the microphone. You have to be talking kind of like this into it to get good sound from it. And it gets in the way of my facial expression and gestures. But that's that's this sort of a thing. So this is called a Blue Yeti. Again, these are around about $100 or thereabouts. High quality USB microphones. You plug them into the computer and then you put them up relatively close to yourself. I don't have Blue Yeti. That isn't a Blue Yeti, but Blue Yeti is a very good brand of microphone. And if you really want to have a very good setup, you can go for this kind of a thing. This is a proper podcasting microphone on an angle poise stand that you can have hanging in front of you, moved out of the way, and so on. That using one of these will make you look, really quite professional, if that's what you're wanting to do, if you're wanting to try and make that impression. And I also like not to use the sound coming out of speakers for me to hear. I prefer to have sound in my ear so that I can hear things around, and also so that I'm not disturbing people around me. So those are some basic guidance. Obviously, there's some things like being in a quiet environment, not having music playing nearby. Sometimes you can't really help that, but this is a fairly obvious thing. And eliminating fan noise, air conditioning noise, and so on. If you can do that, that's all well and good. And you can, within Zoom, within the Zoom settings, test your settings. I'll be showing you some Zoom settings later on, but you can go into the audio settings and make a test recording to see how you sound. Or a very good way of doing it is simply to start a meeting yourself, record your own meeting, and once you've recorded your own meeting, you then play it back and see how you sound and how you look. Okay, so that's a little bit about audio. What I want to talk about now is video. And you can see that my image is looking quite good. This is because I'm using a webcam that is here, which is directly on my eye line. As Grace was saying in my introduction, I work in the TV industry. So I work in TV studios, and I therefore know how to set up a shot to look kind of natural and to look right. And a very good rule is that there should be a horizontal line from the speaker straight to the lens of the camera. So whatever you are doing, if you're standing or you're sitting, there should be that horizontal line to your camera. If, for example, you have a camera much lower down, you're going to look kind of like this. Now this is not a good look. I have seen plenty of people online talking like this. This is where the camera is. Really not a good look. The other thing, of course, is that if you've got a webcam on your laptop and a second screen, you may well have a situation where you're doing your presentation like this, where you're talking, looking at the screen that's got the other people, but the camera's over there. Again, you can't connect with the audience unless you're looking at the audience. So what I do is I position the audience on the large screen that I'm looking at directly below the webcam that I'm talking into. So I appear to be talking directly into the camera, but actually what I'm doing is I'm looking at the people on the call. So the key thing is get the camera at your eye level. And you can see as I lift this up, the view becomes that much better. It also gives away the fact that I'm not actually in my lounge. I'm sitting in front of a green screen. So this is kind of what my setup is here, that I'm sitting in front of a green screen. And that is how I have this nice background behind me. So whatever it takes, putting the laptop on books, setting the webcam at an eye line and adjusting that if you're choosing to stand or sit will allow you to communicate effectively, get eye contact with your audience. There is quite a question around, yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at some of the comments. So there is a bit of a question as to whether you should stand or sit. I personally like to stand when I'm delivering a speech. However, I have a bit of an issue with this particular speech because I have an awful lot of tech in front of me that I need to operate, and that is difficult if I'm standing. But if I'm going to deliver a speech where I'm standing, this isn't going to work quite right, but I'm going to stand back. I'm going to have to point the camera up and it's going to miss the top of my green screen. But I prefer to stand because it allows me space for my hands. It allows me to make much more effective body language gestures. And it also allows me, if I'm wanting an aside, to say, what you really should do is this. This is something that you can do on Zoom that you can't do in a physical presence. That it's a very effective tool that I've seen many presenters use with great impact. That you're saying something and then you want like a little aside that you want to reinforce a point. and I really enjoyed that point. So you stand back, you have the space. I can't move my hands out very far because they exceed the edge of my camera's this particular setup, and I'm missing the green screen off the top here. But standing allows much more impact, allows much more energy, and for me, it allows me to think better. Because I worked for a very long time as a technical trainer, I always spoke when I'm standing. I can think better when I'm standing, and I can present more effectively when I'm standing. However, there are some technical limitations of standing if I've got all of my tech that's in front of me. What about lighting? So lighting is also terribly important. That I've seen way too many. I'm looking around the pictures here to see if I can pick on anybody. So it's really important to have front lighting. So I've got some light coming in from the window here. Not that's a fake window. Lighting coming in from a real window, so that I'm being relatively front lit. If you have the light behind you or the background is very bright, the impact on the audience will be that you are in silhouette. It will be difficult for you to be seen. So trying to get lighting from the front is a good idea. One way of achieving that is the use of something like this. This is called a ring light. So this is a series of little LEDs, and you can clip this onto the laptop screen around the camera, which means that you are being lit from the front. That is particularly effective if you're in a relatively dark room. You can also get much bigger ring lights. You can get other front lights to help light you from the front and to control the lighting. There is a bit of an issue around daylight, that when the sun is very bright coming in this window, it tends to burn out the image. So it depends on the quality of your camera, how effective your camera is at dealing with very bright lights and not so bright lights. But if you are relying on sunlight, then the thing to do is to use some thin curtains to take that light level down, and so on. Okay, there are a few questions that I've seen being popped into the chat, and I'm also going to pass over to Grace to see if there's any questions that have gone her way. So Grace, do you have any questions? Not hearing you, Grace.
Okay. Apart from what you've already seen, Kit, nobody has sent me any question privately. So we just have like a few questions in here, which I suppose you have already answered.
Okay. So there's a question from Emma who's saying, how do you achieve eye level with a webcam? Mine is on top of the PC, which is too high. Generally speaking, if it's on top of the PC, well, okay, if it's too high, I guess you could stand. I'm not quite sure how it could be too high. So Emma, would you like to explain that point? I'm
sorry,
slightly
I don't mean on top of the PC. I mean it's on top of the monitor. So if
right, okay.
If I'm looking directly at you now, I'm probably not looking at the camera. So the webcam's on top of the monitor, and I don't know what to do with it.
Well, what I can tell you is that it's exactly the setup that I've got. So I'm just going to just give me a second. So that's exactly where my webcam is, but my monitor is set up so that it is, the top of it is just below eye level. So yeah. That's how I've got my my monitor set up. Now, I may be able to highlight the fact that I'm mostly talking about people using PCs for Zoom. I would thoroughly recommend using a desktop computer. If you are trying to do a presentation, if it's important, doing it using a mobile device is not a brilliant idea. I mean, it's possible, it's doable, but if you're going to do that, if you're going to use a phone, then I would thoroughly recommend excuse me, I thoroughly recommend using a tripod stand, so mounting the phone in a holder on a tripod so that you can get it at eye level. Trying to use a phone sort of propped up is not going to work particularly well. It's not going to be easy to get it at eye level. So that's that's not a great way to do that. I have seen some quite effective presentations. There was a guy at a district conference, in fact, who wanted to do his presentation. I mean, I've really no idea what this guy was thinking about, but he put his phone on a tripod and went and stood outside so that he was doing this presentation from outdoors, and a bird tried to take his phone. So it actually landed on the phone, it knocked the tripod over and disconnected him for a few minutes, and then he came back. So, oh, sorry about that, a bird attacked my phone. So, you know, these are things. I mean, this was a huge district conference. So, you know, maybe that was a good reason not to try something kind of tricky like that. Any other questions?
Okay, there's one question here. What's the best webcam? And your virtual background is, of course, is good, as it does not have the same look like mine. It's not even look like.
Yeah, right. Yes, I've seen that. Right. Okay. So I'm a photographer. So I know about light. I know about framing, and so I have selected this background and I've adjusted its position and its eye line. So I've just searched around for pictures that will look appropriate and will look correct for the lighting. So I've got light coming from this side of my face, and I chose a picture that had apparently a window there. If it had been on that side, I would have flipped the picture. And because I'm using a green screen, and I'm also using some other software that allows me to generate a very good composite, it allows me to have this good background. You'll also notice if I move my hand about, it doesn't get lost. You'll see that there is no, you can see through the gap here. That generally doesn't happen. So I'm not using Zoom's built-in virtual background. I'm actually using some software on my computer that is generating this whole background. You know, as I said, I'm sitting in front of a green screen like this. And I took quite some time searching around for virtual backgrounds that I thought would look nice and appropriate. And I also tend to, so, you know, I could, for example, go with the, you know, the formal TI kind of background, that if I'm doing something a little bit more formal, I would go for that. That if it's night time, the home background with the light doesn't quite work. So if it's nighttime, I tend to look intellectual, and I have a bookcase behind me. So this is, you know, this is how I set this up, just to try and make the picture visually interesting rather than sitting in front of a grey wall. Visually interesting, but not distracting. Any other questions?
Okay, just a follow-up question to that. Can you please tell us, how did you actually put up that green screen, or what is
right, the
that
green screen?
What's the best way to do that?
Right, so this green screen is actually, I went to an art store and I bought a series of about 1 meter by 1 meter neon green sheets of paper.
Cardboard?
They're just thick card. They're not cardboard, they're just thick card. So they're art boards in neon green. Get it as neon as you can get, because that produces the best result for a background, for a backdrop. The other thing that you could do, excuse me a moment, the other thing that you can do is go get yourself something like this. This is a photographic prop. So I have a large expandable big green thing like this, which can be green or it can be blue. So it doesn't work so well in this room, and it's a little easier to use the card on the wall technique. So that's something that I use elsewhere as a green screen. It's a photographic prop, part of my photographic equipment. Any other questions?
Do you have, how do you control the slides in
okay, that's kind of going to be the next session.
All right.
So how do I control the slides and talk and explain points on the slides? That's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in the next session. Any others?
Webcam, what's the best webcam?
The best one you can afford. So I've got quite a number of different webcams. The one that I'm talking to here, this is a Logitech C270, I think it is, which produces a pretty good image. That I got what I could get during the start of the lockdown, when it was nigh on impossible to buy webcams. So I can't say that I've tested a lot of them, but the ones that work best are actually the higher end, in my personal experience, is the higher end brands. This is Logitech. I got a cheaper webcam that was the only one that I could get at the start of lockdown, which is kind of okay. It doesn't work brilliantly. It has some odd color issues with it, and then my good muffin tattoo. Right. Okay. Yeah. So there's a comment in chat. I was just looking at. Okay. Well, I'm going to call this part of the session to a close. If you can give me a moment just to set myself up for the next session. So I'll be continuing in like 2 minutes. So timer, could you give us a 2-minute time while I just